Chapter 27. Clara. You! Sugar Plum shouted furiously. The sweets regent strode into the room, Dewdrop trailing close behind. The fairy's sparks were not so pretty now. They were flaming red. Did you really think you could stop me? Sugar Plum advanced upon Clara, when an entirely new army is always at my fingertips. She was about to strike when suddenly she tripped the wire Clara had run about the room. It pulled the pin holding the chandelier from the wall, and the entire fixture came crashing down. Clara jumped back in time. The chandelier landed around Sugar Plum, trapping her like a heavy golden cage. For a moment, Sugar Plum seemed startled. Then her face flooded with rage. "Foolish child!" she shrieked. "I believed you," Clara shouted back. "We all did, and you betrayed us." Sugar Plum clutched the chandelier cage bars. "Do you honestly think you can beat me, your mother's most beautiful creation, the one who listened to her, understood her, and loved her most, even as she abandoned us in favor of her children? If you had really loved my mother, you wouldn't have destroyed so much of her creation," Clara retaliated. "But that's all at an end now, Sugar Plum." Unexpectedly, Sugar Plum smiled, sickeningly sweet. "Did you hear that, Dewdrop?" she sneered. "The little Starbum girl says that's all at an end." "Oh, boo-hoo," Dewdrop mocked, flitting around the cage. "When actually," Sugar Plum's eyes flashed, "it is just the beginning." Without warning, she unfurled two massive shimmering fairy wings. Clara gasped, stumbling back. Sugar Plum flapped her wings, beautiful and terrifying, lifting up off the ground and straight out of the chandelier cage. In that instant, Clara realized how much danger she was in. She darted sideways and rolled under the engine's machinery. Meanwhile, Sugar Plum plucked up a handful of buckets and flew to the engine's control panel. She twisted the key and then landed on the platform, dumping at least 100 toy soldiers at her feet. "Yes, hide, my sweet," Sugar Plum goaded. "That won't save you now. What a disappointment you must have been, little Clara. You with your awkward ways, tripping over your own feet, always some screwdriver in your hand, oil in your hair. Goodness, how I watched you from the clock. You, compared to me?" Sugar Plum cackled. What was Marie thinking? Clara crept out from her hiding place, never taking her eyes off the sweets regent. "She was proud of me for the person I am," Clara said, believing every word with her whole heart. "She loved me for that." She inched toward the control panel. "Every part of me." Another step. "And that was the very last thing she told me." One step more. Clara was nearly there. Sugar Plum was right where she needed to be. "You were right, Sugar Plum," Clara said. "I am every inch my mother's daughter." In a flash, she bolted the final link to the control panel and slammed down the power button. "Look out!" Dewdrop cried, whizzing up to Sugar Plum's shoulder. But it was too late. Sugar Plum caught sight of her own reflection in the mirror Clara had carefully angled in front of the engine's tube just before the laser beam flashed. Clara shielded her eyes. The beam bounced off the mirror and zapped towards Sugar Plum and Dewdrop. A direct hit. They were enveloped in a brilliant burst of light. And then Clara heard the sound of something hitting the ground. She slowly peeked out. Sugar Plum and Dewdrop were gone. Upon the platform rested a tiny hair clip in the shape of a fairy and a pretty porcelain doll.